Okay, well, hey Natalie, welcome to the 12 Days of Teardowns. Thanks for joining me today. How are you doing?
Very good. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm excited to dig into this one. Today,
Me
as you
too.
know, we're going to be looking at the realreal.com. Is there any reason in particular that you signed up for this brand?
I love shopping and I've been looking for some vintage Bottega Veneta. So I'm excited to see what it looks like from the perspective of somebody who's been searching for kind of a specific product and lands on the site on a product page through an ad.
I actually am really excited to look at this also. The reason I had signed up initially is because last holiday season I was selling some more designer name things on a different reselling platform. And I think I could have done a better job had I both searched on the RealReal and taken that into consideration. So excited to
Mm.
see what their website kind of looks like and what sort of experience they offer people shopping.
Yeah, for sure. So we're going at it from the lens of I've searched on Google for some specific keywords. Maybe it's the brand name plus, the product type. So like a bag, and I've probably been shown a bunch of options, and I land on a product page.
Great. Let's see.
All right. First
Oh,
off,
interesting.
yeah, lots of thoughts right off the bat. I think the thing that catches my eye is like these similar products. Um,
Hmm.
Normally, I would just go straight to kind of looking at the navigation and trying to decipher what they offer here, but I'm pretty distracted by the similar products, and I think it's a really interesting tactic. We've seen this a lot from some of the big box companies, folks that have a lot of SKUs, if you have a lot of similar products to offer. Lamps.com does it, Wayfair does it. When you come from an ad and you land on a product page, often they're recommending similar products above the fold. And they're often doing it in that sort of delayed load as well, where I can already see there are more ways to shop here. And that has the added benefit for the user of just giving them interest and intrigue and finding confidence that they can find something on the site. But I bet it also brings down their bounce rate. People are less likely to just leave and go click on one of those other ads from Google and more likely to stay here and shop the products on the Real Real.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And it's kind of interesting because at first reaction, you might think like, oh, wow, there's a lot of options here. That's a bit overwhelming. I just wanted to look at that one purse, but in reality, you're already doing that comparison shopping, so you don't feel like you have to go off the site.
Yeah, for sure. And I
Um,
would say these comparisons are good. Like they can be more or less successful, but based on the product we're seeing here, these ones look pretty similar, right?
yeah, definitely. I
Cool.
like when you sort of hovered over those comparison images, seeing it in use on someone gives you a better uh, sort of perception of the size of the product, which is nice.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. And I think we've tested this on a number of sites. And I think, particularly for products where the scale isn't quite sure when it's floating out in space, it can be really nice to have a model or a mannequin or even a hand just holding a pen or a notebook to show what the scale is and even what the length of the strap is. Like I'm getting so much information from these hover effects. It hasn't worked
Hmm.
every time we've tested it on every client's site. But in this situation, I think it's really effective at giving you more
Yeah,
context.
cool.
Cool.
Um, what is your impression on sort of all the numbers that are going on? I feel like after I saw those images, the next thing I saw was a bunch of different sale prices, strikeouts, both on the comparison products and then also in that main product buy box area.
Yeah, I'm interested to know how they got these numbers. I guess for me, it makes me feel like a little bit of low trust because knowing that the original price point of these items was already high, I don't know if they're showing me the original price point or what the price point was marked down to because it's used, and then the discount is added on top of that. So already I'm sort of like doing the math, feeling a little bit of distrust. I need to do some secondary research. I might go off site to sort of validate that these numbers are right based on the condition that they're assigning these, but it does look like a really great discount. 80% off seems
Hmm.
like something I should definitely swoop up. They're also doing a couple tactics here where they're showing both the percent savings and the final cost. Another thing I'd be interested to know is if they show the dollar off amount. And we had the same question on the Costco website. I think for high price
Mm.
point items, it can be pretty effective to show percent savings rather than dollar amount savings. But for some of the products that get a little bit lower price point, um, it can be more effective just to show the inverse, and that has the effect of not sort of scaring someone with the price that they're saving.
Hmm.
If I'm saving $400, how much is the thing going to actually cost, right? So they're
Yeah.
doing a good job here of making it feel like a big discount, but not making the end price feel too hefty.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
Um, cool. So maybe let's scroll down a little bit and see what else they have going on.
I would just say there's a couple things above the fold that are kind of like stealable. So
Oh, nice.
I would say one of the things we talked about early on is you're like, oh, I could have done a better job selling with a RealReal. They probably
Hmm.
have multiple goals here, which is like get folks to add products to the cart, get them to explore the site, not bounce, and then ultimately convert. But there's kind of a secondary goal for a different audience, which is, or maybe the same audience, there's probably some overlap, which is to sell. And so they're calling out that call to action pretty big, bold, and beautiful in the menu. And I think
Yeah.
that's pretty interesting. You can kind of see those goals in a little bit of conflict with each other, but they are kind of letting that go away as we scroll. So I feel pretty focused on the product. Another stealable, I would say, are the breadcrumbs. And I know breadcrumbs can tend to make a website feel a little bit outdated, but in the case of landing pages from like particularly a Google shopping ad, this is another way to get me to stay on the website rather than bounce and go to a competitor site. So we've tested adding them, we've tested removing them, and particularly for the landing experience of coming from an ad. This is like a definitely a helpful way to users to help them explore the site, but also a great way to get people to stay engaged and look at more handbags if they're not inspired by what they see here.
Hmm. Both great stealables for other brands. And I think that's something we were sort of talking about earlier is the experience coming from the Google Shopping ad is actually quite different than coming directly to the RealReal's homepage, because when you're directed directly to the homepage, there's sort of a pop-up, more of a call to action on signing up for either to sell or an account or whatever it is. And this is really focused on the shopping experience, which I think is great if you're coming from a Google Shopping ad.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. So, what are your first impressions of the product images, description?
Well, they're putting a lot of emphasis on the discount here, which I think is pretty smart considering if I'm on the site, I'm already kind of a persona or of an audience that is looking for a deal. I appreciate a deal. One thing they're not giving me right now is a lot of urgency, being that we're around the
Mm.
holiday season. Oh, and I got a pop up for taking any action.
Oh,
Being that we're around the holiday season, I am curious if there's like an end date to this, and that might add some urgency as to whether or not I decide to purchase at this point.
yep, that makes sense. So that pop-up came up when you clicked on add to bag, or what did
It
you do
I
to?
highlighted the price, and my
Oh,
impression is that by taking any action on the site, they're gonna ask me to log in or sign up. And we can see if I
yeah.
can get rid of it, so we can just kind of scroll the page net new. Could also be scroll based, so there are
Hmm.
different kinds of triggers. It could be time on site. It could be based on the fact that I'm scrolling. It could be based on the fact that I took one action or multiple actions. Let's see if I refresh and this goes away. Cost them a couple of odd pennies every time I do, but I think for the sake of this,
Well, I
it's
guess
worth it.
speaking of the pop-up just for a second, I know
Sure.
in general we don't necessarily recommend that brands use pop-ups, but every situation is different. What do you think of that one?
Yeah, it just depends on how high my motivation is. If they're really giving me strong, good recommendations and I click add to bag or I've shown some intent, if I'm a little bit higher intent, I think it makes sense to have a registration wall or a paywall or whatever kind of pop up or overlay. It looked like that was not excusable. So I couldn't say skip it and sign up later.
Hmm.
So it could be that it's detracting folks from actually taking any action on the site. But if I've shown some kind of intent, if I've taken an action, it might be appropriate. So in that situation, it seems all right, permissible, if you will,
Yeah.
and probably a great lead generation source for them to email me now my personalizations. They know I'm looking for this kind of woven leather specialty bag. So it could mean
Yeah.
that they're going to send me some really great personalizations, which if they are, then that full system may be really effective for them.
Yeah. Cool. Makes sense. Oh, interesting. So I'm not um, super familiar with everything about the Real Real. So it's interesting to me that there's not a lot of mention here about it being used. until
Hmm.
you get to the condition.
Hmm.
And that condition seems very helpful. And I think that the imagery makes it seem like it's in pretty good condition. So having that there is, builds trust for me. I'm like, oh, okay, they're being realistic with me about what to expect.
Yeah, it's interesting. They are telling me a lot about this bag. But speaking of not knowing about the real, I wonder if there's an opportunity to tell us here. It looks like they get a little bit to sort of like the benefits of
Mm,
purchasing used. Oh, and there's that pop up
hmm.
again. They get to the benefits of purchasing used by talking about the sustainability calculator. And I love this. I would call this proof in numbers. And there's a lot of ways you can slice it, different things you can emphasize. Could be about client satisfaction. Here we're talking about sustainability, but I wonder if there's an opportunity here for them to show or tell about the RealReal and why I would want to purchase from them. Um, it looks like they have a call out for authentication, I'm sure, or I
Mm,
hope they've tested like opening or closing that to find out how much more or less important it is to users. I think if I'm spending a couple $100s on a bag, especially used, authentication is pretty
yeah,
important to me. And I
yeah,
would
for
also
sure.
be interested in knowing, the story of Bottega is really interesting. It's about, using sort of like the scraps of leather from this,
Mm,
sort of heritage location, Italian made. And I know that on other marketplaces, they're pretty good about talking about the brand and why you would want to purchase that anyway. So rather than just talking about the product, I wonder if for some of these larger companies with a lot more on the sort of aftermarket sales, it would be worthwhile to invest about some brand content on this page here. And you see that done really well on some of the more high end kind of first run stockists like Number Six Store or Macus
mm,
online. I would be really interested to know if that would be helpful for them and help sell the case of Bottega, because I may have heard the name and not know much about it, and that might convince
yeah,
me or take me over the edge.
yeah, for sure. That's cool. I love the sustainability calculator. That is a really fun way to kind of emphasize the benefits of purchasing used.
Yeah.
And then I like that have a similar item, book an appointment to sell. That seems like another sort of subtle but also obvious call out to the fact that you can sell, not only purchase on their site.
Yeah, and it looks like they're kind of using the same color, if I recall, as that call to action above. So
Hmm.
I'm starting to build a little bit of an understanding of maybe that's just their brand color, but maybe they're using that specifically for those calls to action to ask people to become a seller.
Yeah.
I did notice earlier, we're not seeing it here, but I had had some recently viewed products underneath
Mm,
when I was not in a guest tab. So I think there's definitely a lot of opportunity. If you look at like Target.com, they're going to give you four different carousels that show similar products. And those four different carousels are going to be more from bags, more from Bottega, more in leather, tons of different ways to shop. So I feel like there is a little bit of a missed opportunity here. And it sounds like I'm just recommending like recommended product widgets at this point. But the point more so is like there's probably
yeah.
more ways to get people to dive in and not abandon at this point, because these are a
Hmm.
lot of details. Is there a way that I can continue to ask people to engage at this bottom part of the page? Other than just kind of like reading, right? Because these feel a
Right.
little bit like FAQs. I feel like I'm at the footer. It doesn't really feel related to my product at this point. Is there something else we
Yeah.
can give them similar to this similar products block that would help me dive in?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Because you're right, scrolling down, it's like all that the meat of what you want to look at is at the top of the page and all the sort of action items. So how to incorporate that a little further down would be awesome.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, so I mean, it's a short product page, but what I guess you don't have to give it a score. Some people don't like to give scores,
Oh,
but
I would never.
if you had any final like takeaways, 1 to 3 learnings or things that you'd recommend testing, maybe a little summary.
Yeah, I think they're doing a lot above the fold to get me to continue to engage. One thing we didn't talk about was this menu, but they're doing a good kind of mixed
Mm,
bag around like shopping by category, shopping by product. It also has kind of the look and feel of like maybe a higher end site with some just like stark black and white brutalism you tend to
hmm.
see. They are giving us above the fold some decent ways to engage, and it looks like they're giving me the details about the product that I really need to get involved. or to get interested and find out if this product is right for me. But I think a lot of opportunity around some of those deeper motivations, linking me to the brand, and then giving me a lot of opportunity below the fold to just continue to engage it rather than hop off and go to one of those other ads that I saw when I was on that first Google page.
Yeah, makes sense. So it sounds like there's a lot of things they're doing really well and potential opportunities for them also. And then a lot of actionable learnings for other brands who are running Google shopping traffic, and sort of some stealables that they can take away from this teardown.
Oh, for sure. Let's test it.
Amazing. All right. Well, thanks, Natalie. That was really fun. And we'll be sure to share this with the team at the RealReal and then also with our audience so they can take away some learnings.
Beautiful. Happy testing.